can we have a quick word about the incredible selective outrage over Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and claims that he ordered some sort of illegal double-tap strike on a boatload of alleged Venezuelan drug runners that somehow turned into the worst war crime since My Lai? You know, the claim that he ordered the military to go back and finish off survivors of a hit on a smuggler's boat who had survived an initial missile strike by the Pentagon as part of the Trump administration's effort to disrupt drug cartels. Well, let me tell you, the selective anger that has outraged out of all of this, well, it's not surprising because it is obviously just part of feeding this week's outrage of the week. You know, last week they thought the Epstein files drop was going to torpedo the Trump presidency. This week they're hoping drug boat strikes sink at least the defense career of Pete Hegseth, whom Democrats have detested from the moment his name was first floated for the position. And as far as this sudden reticence about Americans in combat or when targeting enemies real or imagined, where was the outrage when Barack Obama was the drone striker in chief, ordering more than 500 drone attacks during his presidency, including strikes that killed American citizens without trial? But hey, you know, that was the war on terror and all that. Or where was the outrage from the left the time Joe Biden blew up 10 Afghan civilians because his botched withdrawal from Afghanistan was going so poorly? I think at that point, Democrats were still claiming even that Joe Biden had full control of his faculties. And that's before we get into other incidents, say the infamous highway of death during the first Gulf War. Now, you get my point here. War is hell, and so too is trying to maintain a narrative if your goal isn't so much to advance peace or maintain adherence to the rules of war and civilization, as your goal is to play politics with national security. Now, what I have found so interesting about this story and the outrage about Pete Hegseth allegedly ordering this double-tap strike is that even media outlets that normally would run this story absolutely into the ground and have us all wondering if beating a dead horse was a violation of the Geneva Conventions, even some of them have started to have second thoughts. Now, I don't know. Could it be that Trump's penchant for suing the pants off media outlets that play fast and loose with the truth has started to pay dividends? After the Washington Post story claimed that Pete Hegseth has the one who had given kill orders in the Situation Room, like some sort of over-caffeinated 12-year-old playing Call of Duty, well, guess what? The New York Times, yes, I know, the New York Times came out with this little not-so-fast bit of reporting. They found that no, Hegseth did not order that second strike that has been the subject of so much controversy. Rather than telling the military to hit him again, the Times writes, quote, "The officials clarified the sequence of events amid the political and legal uproar that has followed a report in the Washington Post last week. It said that Admiral Bradley ordered the second strike to fulfill a directive by Mr. Hegseth to kill everyone," unquote. And then there was this. The two officials also said Mr. Hegseth made no oral directive at the meeting that went beyond the written order. The Post article did not provide context on when Mr. Hegseth gave what its sources described as a spoken order to kill everyone, unquote. Quite amazing there to see one of these papers calling out the other by name. Meanwhile, academics are now shredding the idea that Hegseth ordered some sort of war crime, with one Cornell professor calling the legal analysis behind the claim dangerous. And then there was this, the coup de grace of this so-called scandal. ABC News, yes, the American ABC, sank the story like it was, well, a Venezuelan speedboat full of uncut cocaine.
Tonight, new information. According to a source familiar with the incident, the two survivors climbed back onto the boat after the initial strike. They were believed to be potentially in communication with others and salvaging some of the drugs. Because of that, it was determined they were still in the fight and valid targets. A JAG officer was also giving legal advice.
Ooh, so I guess that's the Hegseth outrage done for. Or is it? You see, Hegseth is right now enemy number one of the deep state left that is trying to take down the Trump administration. Now, if you watched last week, you remember a video I showed you with Democrat politicians and former intelligence officers telling the military, the U.S. military, to refuse illegal orders like this.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
Yeah, look, that video was, as we've discussed, a rather, shall we say, sedition-adjacent. And the bald fellow in that video was none other than Mark Kelly, a sitting U.S. senator and former Navy officer whom Pete Hegseth has threatened to court-martial for encouraging soldiers to break the chain of command. Now you see what the fight is about. This is why they see Hegseth as needing to be stopped. And Kelly is leading the charge to undermine Hegseth and get him replaced to get himself out of trouble. Here's Kelly earlier.
He runs around on a stage talking about lethality and warrior ethos and killing people. We have the most competent, capable military this planet has ever seen by far. That's not the message that needs to come from the Secretary of Defense.
I'm sorry, what? Lethality is not a good thing for a Secretary of War, and that's right, they renamed the department to talk about? I'm sorry, this is the Pentagon he's running, not the NYU School of Social Work. The more you look at this, though, it becomes more and more clear that the problem isn't that Hegseth has been doing his job poorly, but in fact that he is doing it too well. Pete Hegseth has become a lightning rod not because he's blown up drug boats, but because he is threatening to blow up the slow-motion campaign to undermine the Trump administration that now sees the president's enemies, who claim to be the great defenders of the Constitution, urging soldiers to disobey orders to undermine the commander-in-chief. To borrow an old saying from the Vietnam War, they're trying to destroy democracy in order to save it. Well, as far as I'm concerned, if it's between a guy who wants to kill the enemy and a guy who wants to give them hugs, I know who I want as my Secretary of War. Save the outrage for something that matters.